data points within your interest area. And when we look at that data and disaggregate it even more, what is it telling us? And that's what helps guide you on what interventions, what strategies are we going to use given what the data is telling us. Okay, next slide. So to get us started, all of you have seen the effective team meeting guidelines. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this. They're right there. They're 11. You got a Word doc or PDF that detail much more. I just want to have a brief conversation with all of you. I want to ones kind of resonated with you, which kind of rose to the top. Anyone, please feel free to share.
I like number 3, and 4, and 5. They're all right there in my wheelhouse. I'm all about consensus, but sometimes you can't get it, right?
Yes, thank you.
I think I like the, keeping the agenda simple. I think sometimes, when there's too many items, we kind of get lost and people are often overwhelmed.
At the end, when there's 5 minutes left and people are pushing through, like to get through 2 more items, and they don't get the same robust discussion or the time that they deserve. So I think keeping it to, okay, maybe we can only do these 4 items and we're not going to pay 5 or 6 because we know we can't actually give them the time that they need to be discussed. And I think also number 9, remaining attentive, thoughtful, and respectful. I think that's really important, especially with a lot of us in here who haven't worked together before. We're bringing a lot of lens from our disciplines, our experience, and realizing that, we're all here with the same goal. And hopefully between all of our knowledges and our gift that we can share with each other, we can, even if they're different, we can come to a certain place where it's for the benefit of the student and our campus community as a whole.
Yes, thank you. Maybe 1 or 2 more.
I like number 6, share responsibilities for work and meeting conduct, because I think each of us have our strengths, but a lot of times I feel like the work tends to fall on 1 or 2 people more heavily than others. And so I think that just being more mindful of just sharing the responsibilities is just a great reminder for us. I like that. And
hi, Mona. I haven't seen you in a while.
Good to see you. Thanks for all your emails. I do read them.
Oh, you're the one. Fantastic. All right. 1 more?
I was just going to say that 3 and I think it was 11 really speak. Obviously, we're all busy, and it's just so nice to have an idea of what I need to get done prior to or in between meetings. Because I think, as Dawn was saying, knowing what I have to do is half the battle, and then obviously doing it is the second half. But I think those are very important for constructive meetings and for contributing to number 8.
Great. And you have 2 wonderful leads that are going to help you through the process. I'm going to discuss the process in a moment. But it's nice to have. You may want to keep these handy, and it's a way to hold each other accountable sometimes, when you start, hey, are we really doing number whatever? So it's a nice list to have. If we can click on, keep clicking there. So now what I want to do is, if you can let over the inquiry and action process to give you all an idea of the work that you're going to do. This one is, and mindful, I try my best not to do a ton of talking. You're going to do all the work later, so bear with me as I go through and explain this. I'm going to be talking for a little bit, and I'm going to go a little bit fast because I want you to get started on your work, but I just want to really give you a rich context. This is an example of an inquiry and action process, and this happens to be for a STEM team. And you will be actually, as a team, you will be completing this document as a Google Doc or whatever. I think it's going to be as a Google Doc as you move forward with the work. The first thing I'll say is that this process is nothing groundbreaking about it, really. Step one is aggregating, identifying the student needs. Step two is, okay, what strategies are we going to try to implement given what the data is telling us? Step three is putting that into a plan to implement. Step four is about who's going to do the work. And I want to stop for a moment on who's going to do the work. Your teams are not going to shoulder all of the work of the ideas that you're going to do is go reach out to the coalition of the willing, fellow faculty, others in student services, say, hey, we'd like to do this with, do you want to come on board? So step four is about who's going to do the work, but know that you're not the ones that are always doing all of the work, okay? You're kind of like this brain trust kind of group that's looking at data, is making recommendations and helping to have people within your interest area get more involved in these strategies. Step five is about, well, how do we know if this is going to work? So we try to create some kind of metric, some kind of measurement. And step six could be, hey, do we need some money potentially for some of these strategies? So you're going to engage in today, actually, in step one. Dwayne and Lauren came up with some data that you're going to engage in. And in this particular team, what they looked at a variety of data, and after they looked at all that variety of data, what they then did on 1.2 is that they narrowed down, because there's a lot of data, what do we want to address? And so what you'll find, these prompts are really important, such as, are there any identified needs already being addressed through existing programs and initiatives? No sense in reinventing the wheel and duplicating efforts, right? So this particular team found that 2 and 3 from above already being worked on through multiple measures, through core requisites, and increased investments in supplemental instruction. But what they did want to work on after grappling with the data is that they found that very few students were interested in their interest area, and that one particular discipline was really struggling. Their largest major in STEM is bio, something like 600 or 700 students, big campus. And what they were finding is that those students who are in trig and pre-cal, less than 5% of those students were going to calculus 1. And of those, less than 10% were actually transferring. And they happened to look at a subset of their population. They found that veteran students were not enrolling in math. As a team, that's what they wanted to focus on. And so what teams rarely do is come up with a purpose statement. You're going to come up with a purpose statement as a result of your data analysis. The purpose statement sometimes can take 1 or 2 meetings, and it's always a work in progress. But it usually starts with 2, is to do something. And then it's by doing something. The reason it's a work in progress is because as you go through your other steps and you solidify what you're going to do, you're going to go back to your purpose statement. Step 1.4 isn't all times it is. In this particular case, we wanted to know why aren't veterans taking math? And so I actually went out and did focus groups with them. And what we learned was that, look, they had consternation about math. They hadn't taken it in 4 to 16 years. And they didn't really feel comfortable with existing tutoring services. They felt that those tutors didn't really relate to them. With the biological science students who basically said, I don't see the connection between trig and bio. And so then step 2 is about what are we going to do about it, given what the data is telling us. Step number 2, maybe your 3rd meeting, 4th meeting, where you start talking about this, and you're actually going to go out and do a little bit of research on your own. You're all educators. What works? What can we do? What does the research say? And we'll give you resources for how to do that. What this particular team landed on is that they wanted bio and math faculty to come together to create contextualized materials in math and bio for special sessions within the classroom and for tutoring. They wanted a STEM outreach intervention, pre-collegiate activities with the local high schools to get them excited about STEM. And then they had a veteran student intervention, which is simple enough. They wanted to have veterans who succeeded in math become tutors and mentors. And then here you go. Here's the research behind that this team strategies that they want to implement. Then when we get to the implementation plan, I'm not going to go through this in depth, but it gives you an idea of the level of detail that you'll need to have. This tells you, for example, that pre-collegiate activity, again, the level of detail of these pre-collegiate activities, what they're going to do exactly in these 3 days with these high school students. So you're going to be thinking about the devil's in the details. We want to do these strategies. What is the step-by-step to how to implement these? And then, as I mentioned earlier, who's going to do the work? Who's declaring STEM from a baseline number of X? And we want to triple it. Proportionally impacted populations, what we're finding is that it's even lower. And then do we need any... and this is where Lisa comes in, because as a team, as you are formulating this, and if you need funding for any interventions, you'll give Lisa that detailed, and then we can see if we can get some guided pathways funding or funding from somewhere else. The strategies don't need funding. They don't always need funding. So just to kind of summarize again, it's a process to help you be productive, give you steps. There are prompts for each, and essentially your agenda becomes where you're at in the process of this inquiry and action process. So any questions about it?
I have one.
Yes,
if you objectives, and it's good that they're measurable objectives, is there a process that later comes back and says, did we meet those measurable objectives or not? And what do we do?
Exactly. And so you'll come up with your metrics, and then as you implement and see the data come back, and by the way, if the data comes back and it shows that it didn't work, then it didn't work. No one's going to be graded or evaluated. This is what scientists do, right? They do experiments. Do they always work the first time? No. You're essentially using a scientific method for how to improve student success and equity. So let's see what the data says. And if it's not working as a team, like, what can we tweak? What do we need to change? Maybe we need to get some student input as to why it didn't work. Well, again, so that's a really good question, Don. Any other questions? I did such a good job explaining it that everybody's just good to go. All right, very good. I think, oh, yes.
I just had
Tanya,
one.
Be able to do that, right? You know what, Lisa, I'll let you speak to this. What we've seen so far from the teams, it's actually been very modest. Mm-hmm. It's been in the forms or some reassigned time or some supplies or something, or to pay people to serve as mentors or something like that. And it's not like you're going to start always scaling within your interest area. You may start with a small group and then build from there. Lisa, I don't know if you want to speak to that.
So if we've been told that we're going to have additional funding coming in, but right now we have an excess of funding. But again, if I look at all the proposals that have come through, maybe we're asking for, I think, $3,000 to $5,000. One of them asked for roughly $40,000. So one of the proposals asked for a bigger chunk of money. But what they're trying to do is to initiate long-term changes in syllabi or welcome letters and expectations of the college. Right. So they want to actually pay people to do that work, and they have a significant number of faculty that they'd like to recruit, which is why they asked for such a big budget. Yeah. So, but there is funds that are available. There really is. And that's one of the things we're trying to do, is to make sure that when we come up with initiatives and strategies, that we do not limit it just because of funding. Right. But there are certain things we're not allowed to fund just because the nature of the grant.
Sure. Well, with that, I think I'm just going to propose anything that comes to mind. So, yeah.
And before Ali, just really quickly to note that one of the criteria is sustainability, right? So if we need a big chunk of money to keep doing something, can the college institutionalize that, have the capacity for it? And so we gotta, Lisa will help with this, you know, is what we want realistic in terms of long run, because when the money runs out, we don't want this to be a one-shot thing, and then you know we're back to square one where we try something and then everybody forgets about it. We want to do things as much as possible that are going to be Ali.
Thank you. I apologize if this was already covered, but do we have a student representative on this committee? Because I don't know if it's a webinar or something I watched where one of the community colleges had given stipends to students in those disciplines to make sure that that voice was represented, either alumni who had went through some of those areas successfully or current students who are actually going through it. So I just was wondering if that's been discussed or if that's in progress. And if it is, I apologize. I'm not really super familiar.
No, that's a great question. Unfortunately, in our district, students. And so we've been struggling with that throughout the entire time. So on the interest area success team, we have yet to be able to come up with a model on how we could pay them, because we're not allowed to pay them unless they're Nance or their work study. We're not allowed to give them bookstore stipends or gift cards. We're not allowed to give them shirts. We're not allowed to give them. So we're not, and we're really, it's SDCCD has really limited us in two capacities. How we pay classified and how we pay students is very, very difficult in our district.
I will say this though, when I see many teams as they're formulating their strategies, many faculty ask some of their students to come to this meeting to give feedback. And just, I don't know if you want to, I know it depends on faculty, how they feel about extra credit, but some faculty do that. And we get 4 or 5 students, and it's always great actually, because they like, oh, this is what you're thinking. Well, maybe did you think of this? And then, so that's where you can bring them into the conversation. Do they need to be in the whole process? Not really. But it's great to have them up as part of give you feedback on those strategies that you're finalizing. Don?
Yeah. So along that lines, can the faculty use classwork for parts of the analysis, like the statistics class having a project that the class was responsible to do?
Yes. So in the Calc, Creative Arts, Languages, and Communications interest area, they are actually focusing on Art 100. And so they are using those students in one section as a model to collect data. And so they did syllabi changes, and they did an online welcome letter, and they did weekly videos with the professor, and then they have little surveys that the students take, sometimes 2 or 3 questions. They've also been working with She from the research office on putting together a larger survey for students in that class. So yes, they have been using one class as a pilot.
Okay.
And what we'll do for just to keep the momentum here is we'll go back to the slides, and what Lisa's going to do is kind of give you a broad view of the data for the campus. And then once we do that, you're going to go to your respective breakout rooms, and Laura and Dwayne have things prepared for you to begin to do step 1.
So I believe all of you have seen the video by Clarissa on our data, right? Am I correct?
Right.
So I know that Dwayne and Laura had put it in your homework. So if you haven't seen it, I do encourage you to go back, because I typically play it at this point, but I'm not going to play it because I see many more of you nodding heads than I don't. So I'll move on to the next one. Okay, so here's where I want you guys to really kind of understand why we made the interest area success teams one of our priorities this year. We have a college-wide benchmark data retention rate of 88%. So ideally, we want our students, 88% of them, to be able to retain. So this is only looking at the courses. It's not looking at semester to semester. But we have an overall success rate that we have as a college-wide benchmark of 73%. So again, we want students, 73% of our students, to be successful. And so I started to look at the data, and I started to see some things that really concerned me. First, Black African American students have maintained the lowest success rate at 67%. Okay. So 73%. Okay. Latinx and Pacific Islanders have the next lowest success rates at 73 and 84%. And so we also, hopefully, we're aware on this call that we are very close to becoming a Hispanic serving institution, an HSI. But yet, if we look at this, we see that our Latinx students are not successful in our college based on our standards. Ollie, I see your hand.
Lisa, I'm sorry, can you clarify again how we're defining retention? So is it the students who stay in their course throughout the semester? Is that what we're...
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. That's it. And that, again, yes, that is it. So 18 to 25-year-olds have the lowest success rates at 76%. 25 to 29-year-olds at 78%. So if we look at our population, we know that our average population is 26, 27. So a 26, 27-year-old student that comes into Miramar College only has about a 77% chance of being successful in courses. And only 74% of our first generation students are successful. And this really hit home with me because I am a first gen student. My mom did not even finish high school. So my parents did not know anything about college except for that I had to go to college, but they didn't know how to get me there or anything. And if I look at this data, this statistic, then I've only had a 74% chance of being successful. Now, online education has really kind of taken a growth. So we all know this, right? I mean, we went online for the pandemic. But if we look at this, SDCCD saw that our numbers were absolutely horrible. And students who were in online classes were not being retained and they were not succeeding. In fact, at one point, there was less than a 50% retention rate in online classes. So SDCCD as a whole applied for the online pathways grant and then made us all go through that Blackboard training and those Canvas trainings, which I say there's a lot that can be done. Thank God for Ann Gloag because she's really helped us tremendously to kind of work on and improve our online education. Our students who take day and evening classes are the least successful. Now, so we're not even looking at online yet. We're still looking at the data. But if we look at the online only section here, and it's going to be over on the right side, you're going to see that only 71% of online students are successful. And so we started to see some of these really important factors, and this isn't even looking at the data yet from your disciplines. But this, to me, I was looking at the data and I was pulling this report together and all of us were working on our individual pieces. And I was like, okay, we have a little bit of work to do with our benchmark data and our statewide data. But I started asking some more questions, which usually happens with data. And these next two slides scared me. And they scared me for two reasons. At a community college to help my students either transfer or achieve their career goals, academic goals, whatever they are. Two, I have children. And I looked at this data and I saw that we only graduate 17% of our students. And this data has not changed in a decade. And I was dumbfounded because how many students do I tell them, go to community college, it's going to help you to learn the skills to be successful, you're going to benefit from saving money, you get a great education. And I saw this number, and if you could see my arms, you could see they're covered with goosebumps because all of a sudden I felt like I was a big fat liar. I felt like I was telling people to come to a community college and we only graduate only 17% of our students. So I was trying to make myself feel better, not gonna lie. And so I was like, well, that's because most of our students transfer. They don't graduate, they just transfer. And so I was like, okay, I've got this lifeline, I'm gonna save myself, I'm gonna make myself not feel so bad. And then I learned that students who transfer, the average for the last 12 years or 10 years is 1,238. But I do have to tell you this. It was in the 900s until recently. Literally just took a bump up from 910 to 1238. And it's not disaggregated, and I say this on the bottom right, it's not disaggregated by race, ethnicity, gender, and anything like that. They just give us raw numbers. And that's when I realized that we needed help. Our students need help. And every single one of you that is on this call today, we all got into education to help students be successful, but we're not helping them be successful. And that's where the interest area success teams come. Questions?
Yeah, I have a question. Excuse me if this is something you all have talked about in the past, but of that number, do we really have a realistic comparison as to what percentage of students come here with the intent of graduating, as opposed to, I just want to take, or, they may say, I'm doing this to transfer, I'm doing this for an AA, but that may not really be what they're looking for. I know a lot of students in my classes, or a good number of students, say, I'm here because I just want to learn, I've been out of school for a while, or this is of interest to me, not that they're specifically looking for a degree.
So this data is actually similar to national data. So you're not alone. The national data shows that when students pick a goal, which you're right, they may change. But the reality is, if you take the total number of enrollments, so even if them actually do mean to transfer, they fall off after a year. They just drop. Yeah. Which masks a lot because our course success rates say something different. And when you disaggregate the data, it's even worse. And so the Guided Pathways framework was created in order to address this. And when it's implemented well, it just has so much to it, everybody. It's not like one piece of Guided Pathways here, one piece of Guided Pathways. It's the whole framework together. When you're implementing, that's when you begin to see the changes, and you begin to see increases in student success. So we have Dwayne, then Weiling, and then Alana. And sorry, Lisa, I don't know if you wanted to add to that.
No, thank you.
Okay, I just wanted to address your question too, Don. I looked at those statistics specifically pretty in depth. It's been like a decade ago, but the way that at that time, the way that the state measured transfer was through what's called a transfer rate, where the denominator is the number of students who show the intent to transfer by course taking behavior. And they have a specific way that they define that. It has to do with like taking English or math and units. And they also looked at cohorts over 6 years, because sometimes students go part-time and take a long time. And even when you narrowed down just to that denominator, it was still in the 30s for almost every community college in the state. I don't remember what it was for Miramar, and I'm sure it's different now, but I don't think it's probably improved very much since then. So it was still like, say, 1/3 of the students that tried to transfer wound up transferring at the time that I looked at.
Low.
Weiling?
Yeah. And this may be a little unique. I'm not sure, from the other disciplines, but in child development, often the goal at the very beginning of their career is 12 units, let me teach as an assistant. Then they come back in because they know that their pay will rise with more education. And then so, they will come in for a number of classes. So there's this in and out, kind of a revolving door in our discipline. And, of course, we're hoping for them to do is eventually, graduate, have the AA, go on to transfer to get their BA. But over time, they're building their skills and, so how does that, show in the data? or, you know, how can we use that? If that seems to be, you know, a little bit of the typical journey that our students.
You have to tell that story. That's a very important story to be told, right? But that's going to be through your program review. That's going to be through the collection of your surveys. That's going to be through a collection of data. And then that's something that you guys can use to also help you build your program. So good question. And all of our programs are not built alike.
Alana?
Thank you.
Did I pronounce that right? I'm sorry.
My name, yes.
Okay, great.
Yeah, perfect. So my question is for Lisa, and I kind of feel I should already know the answer to this, but for the graduation rate, how was that defined? Is that by students who obtain a degree or a certificate?
Yes.
Okay. Because when I was looking through, I was looking at the PREDD data, because Laura put that together for us in preparation, and I didn't see the graduation rate number. So I was wondering how you got it, but that makes sense. And then I was wondering if it's disaggregated, but of course it is if it's based on
it's not
degree.
Disaggregated. And I actually, the only way I got that is by emailing She and asking She what that number was. And then I asked her to send me that number for the past 10 years. And she sent it for the past 9. And then I just added them up and came up with the average.
Okay, I got you. Because I'm trying to look at like raw number for all, and it's not always the easiest. The dashboard's great, but it's not always the easiest to do that. So I just had a question about that. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And Dwayne.
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly comment on that too. It's really hard to define a graduation rate because it's hard to get the denominator for that. Like you have a numerator, right? How many students actually, we know how many pieces of paper we hand out, but it's hard to know how many students wanted to get a piece of paper, right? Like for instance, we have a lot of students that are enrolled in police and fire, and they don't have any intention of ever getting a degree because they're just there to go through our academy. We count them as our students because we get apportionment for them, but they're not here to get a degree. There's no reason for them to. So it's not to discount the low numbers. I think we would have low numbers anyway, even if we did have a way to measure that correctly. But I do feel like I need to make the point that, like, historically, and still today, we're pretty CTE focused at Miramar. And the data, when you look at transfer rates and graduation rates, the data always kind of it always makes schools that are high CTE schools look lousy. Like I remember when I looked into this like a decade ago, like the worst college in the state. Well, they're not the worst college in the state. It's just the way we were measuring them didn't take into account job preparation skills and things like that. So I'm not saying that to discount the number. I think it is really an important number, but I totally agree with Wai-Ling that we need to just be cognizant of what the mission of our own department or program or interest area is and take that into account because it's not always graduation.
So what we're going to do next is, so the purpose of this is just to show you that campus-wide there's room for improvement, right? And then now you're going to engage on the data relative to your interest area. And that's where you get those nuances, right, Wai-Ling? So that, and you're going to grapple with the data within your interest area. So I don't know, I think we can go into the breakout rooms. Dwayne and Laura, are you good to go? Do you need a minute?
I don't need a minute.
Okay.
I know we were going to take a break though today in the middle of the meeting. Is now a good time for the break before we go?
Al said you're only going to work on your data for 2, no more than 3 meetings. We're not getting stuck in the data cycle. Our goal is to move through the data so we understand it and then start to figure out how we help our students. So let's take a quick break, 10-minute break. We'll come back at 2 and I'll put you into breakout rooms. Al, you're out of here?
Yeah, I have. Yeah,
Okay.
The way it worked out for today. But gosh, I'm so happy you're doing a lot better, Lisa. Thank you.
Oh, me too. Thank you. And thank you for taking over, you guys, on Monday. Thank you.
Oh, I just love their canvas. I can, oh my gosh, they did such a good job. So,
Isn't that amazing?
yeah.
I know. Yes. So, all right. I'll see you Monday, I think, right? I think we have a meeting on Monday.
Yes.
Okay. All right. See you later.
I just got in there. You do not need to stay in this meeting if you would like to leave. Copy of the recording of the meeting that I had with Stephen and Dr. Steve. I'll be back in the Zoom room after this. Thanks for your help. Hey Stephanie, so this is obviously going to be a work group and not a meeting, and so you can check out from here. I would love it though if you could get a copy of this recording, and also if you could get a copy of the recording of the meeting that I had with Stephen and Dr. Spee over the summer. I'd asked Stephen to record it, make a video out of it. I'm hoping that he did, because we talked about the data that that I would love to be able to get to actually do this project with. So yeah. Anyways, I'll be back in the Zoom room after this. Thanks for your help.
Did everybody have a nice little break?
Thank you.
Yes, thanks.
Pablo, did you go surfing in those 9 minutes? You're on mute.
Sorry, no, I was tinkering around the campsite and getting the blood pumping a little bit.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Pablo, are you at San Alejo or South Carlsbad?
Oh, I wish. South Carlsbad.
Yeah.
San Alejo, that's the place. You got VG's Donuts. You got one of the best surf spots in town. Yeah, it's pretty awesome. But this is cool. This is great. The kids love it. It's just scooters and skateboards and bikes all day long. Beach. It's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, I grew up by going there every summer. My folks would take us up there. So.
Yeah, me too. It's cool.
So I think we're still waiting for some people, but I'm going to go ahead and just put you guys in breakout rooms so that you're there. And then I will come visit you. All right. Enjoy.
Thanks, Lisa. I hope you feel better.
Thanks. Some of you,
Thank you.
even though I assigned you, you didn't go in, so I'm moving you right now.
Sorry, it was me, probably one of the people who did that. Let's see.
No.
There you go.
All
Thanks.
right. There.
Great.
Okay. So, hey, Tanya, are you with us there? I can't tell.
You know, I'm having trouble with my camera. It's on, but I'm here.
It's good to see you. Do we all know each other? I think we do, except maybe, well, I don't know. I don't know if we do. So I'm Dwayne. I know all of you. You know who I am. I don't think I need to introduce myself, but maybe we'll just do super quick introductions, I guess. Mona, do you want to connect?
Yeah, sure. I'm Mona Patel. I oversee the Career Center at Miramar as the Career Center Coordinator, counseling. And I was involved with Guided Pathways, with program mapping, and the early conversations that were occurring with interest areas back in 2020. And I'm also really active with regional work that's tied to Strong Workforce Pathways Navigation, Strong Workforce Pathways Navigation Grant. So there's just a lot of overlap in a lot of the work that many of us are involved in right now. So it's exciting, but nice to meet you all.
Thanks. How about Ron?
Yeah, hi, I know everybody. I don't know, Don, I'm the only person I'm not familiar with, but I know everybody else working with another project.
Thanks. Hey, Don, you want to go next?
Yeah, hi. I'm an adjunct in teaching business courses, banking and real estate this semester, and also statistics.
Awesome, thanks. And Tanya?
Absolutely. I don't know why I keep disappearing on you. I promise everyone I'm here.
Time, and I do want to get to the data stuff in this meeting, but I just want to give a little introduction of what I suggest we do. And I'm just a team lead. Like, I'm just a person coordinating us. So if as we go through all of this, if you don't want to do something that I'm suggesting, just tell me. It's okay. I'm just one member. Okay. Don't feel like I'm necessarily guiding you, but I want to provide us some structure. So, okay, we all went through the little homework on Canvas, and you saw what our interest area is. I just wanted to point out maybe one or two things that are somewhat unique about our interest area. One sort of unique part of it is that we are both department are one and the same. And I think we're the only interest area like that on campus. So I think that makes it, I think the first unique point makes it a little more difficult for us, and the second unique point makes it a little easier for us. Okay, so just want to tell you about that. Here's something else that I wanted to share with you just as we go through this. The data that we have available, like the first 2 or possibly 3 meetings that we're going to have is about looking at data, right? What Al and Lisa just told us. But the data that we have to look at, it naturally leads us to only think about issues having to do with that data, and then only come up with solutions having to do with the issues for that data. You follow me? Like, the data is what drives it. But I don't think it's helpful for us to only focus narrowly on how students are doing in our own little individual courses. That's what data we have mostly. So I'm trying to structure our conversation so that we think a little more broadly about what the Guided Pathways program is supposed to be about, which is helping students navigate their way all the way through college, not just in our particular courses. So that's why in the homework, the first two steps, I asked you to look at, like, how do students actually come into our interest area in the first place, right? Like, why does a student want to be a business major? Like, where do they come from, right? We don't have any data on that I know of, but I think it's a super important question because it's the very beginning of the student's journey through our interest area. And then the second step is how does a student select the actual program that they do in our interest area? Like, how do they decide to be a computer scientist, or how do they decide to go into real estate? Again, I don't think we have any data on that, at least none that I know of. Mona, you might know a little more because you're involved with it more, but I don't want us to just not consider that because we don't have the data. You know what I mean? I think that's a really, really important decision and something for us to put some thought into. So, okay. And then step 3 is where we have most of the data, which is how do students do getting through our program. And then step 4 is how do students do moving on out of our program, whether they go to a university or whether they go to the work world. And we do have some data for step 4, I believe. Okay, so I just wanted to share that thought. And, I'm not sure if you agree with me or not. Well, I'll just say, any thoughts about that? Like, does that make sense, the way that I've structured it, or does anyone not want to do it that way?
Yeah, absolutely. Makes sense.
I like the way you sectioned it out.
Meeting we have, we'll look at the next 2 steps.
Oh.
And maybe, we'll have a third meeting for data. I'm hoping not. I would rather look at it quickly and then get involved.
Right.
The next 2 will be our next homework assignment.
Thanks, okay.
Okay, so today, what our goal is today is to look at the data from the first 2 steps, and maybe we all added some really great information about it in that Google Doc. I don't think we have enough time to go through everything we wrote extensively, but I would like to pick out a few things that we think are particularly relevant that people saw, and then start populating that worksheet from the things that we looked at together. So let me pull up that worksheet just so we can see it here. Okay, here it is. Oh, no, that's not it.
To the right.
Are you guys looking at my...
It's the document to the right of it, yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so why don't we just sort of dive in and look at this. I did pull some data for us to look at together for some of these. I got it for me and Ron because we had typed into this before today. I didn't get it for the rest of us. So why don't we just go down the list here and take a look at... today's basically brainstorming about the data. Let's take a look at it and see what we think, and maybe put in the parking lot some stuff that we might want to look at next time, or some stuff that we want to add to our worksheet as like, this is something we want to focus on. So we'll just go down the list here maybe. Tanya, you got the first one here. You notice that women are increasing in entrepreneurship, and you'd like to see the efforts aimed at increasing opportunities for diverse students. So that to my way of thinking, that's why I want to make sure that we cover these 4 steps, because I think if we don't, we might lose opportunities to think about how our equity and diversity efforts can be applied to more than just our courses. It's important in our courses too, but also just why, students coming in.
Yeah. I also, maybe I wasn't. Yeah, maybe I was. I know that I didn't stay on task as I should have, and I kind of interwove a lot of the different steps into one. But I really think it's difficult for our students to sign up for things. I think it's to find classes, to sign up for classes, to make their way through it. I helped my husband to sign up for a class over the summer, and boy, was it a nightmare. So
yeah, it's a common complaint. Different interest area success team that's looking at that very thing. Yeah. Okay, let's see here. I'm moving some stuff to the parking lot because I think they might be solutions.
Right.
Okay, what else can you share about what you saw or what you think is important to focus on in the data about students entering the interest area? Tanya, I see what you wrote here.
Yeah. I think that one thing that I was thinking was, it was difficult for me to see and I mentioned about the entrepreneurship and business kind of aggregated together. I thought it made it a little bit hard to find classes and actually access the classes if they can't find.
I'm going to try to capture that. Other comments from other people in the group about this, about anything here under Tanya's observations?
Yeah, Dwayne, because I see one of Tanya's
things under two.
So right now,
headings.
so remember Don, I think that's probably in your second set of comments there. Yeah, there it is. There, step two, like once in that case, a student might be interested in the social sciences, right? And then how do they know the difference between psychology and sociology? And how do you find that out? I don't think we have any tools for that right now, but maybe we should, Yeah.
Kind of what your personality types are, they will lead you to a list of this many different jobs. It could be lots of different paths.
And people love self-assessments.
Yeah. So we're talking about like a major interest inventory, right?
Right.
Yeah. Okay, good. Okay, thanks. So I feel like we have so many ideas on the sheet. I want to make sure we get to them today. Ron, I see you had some questions about the companies in the specific radius of our college. So I did actually look into that a little bit before our meeting. Let me share with you what I found, and then we can talk about this and see how it might impact students coming to us. So there's two things I found. One is the biggest employers. I didn't really look exactly around our college, but I think just in terms of San Diego, these are the biggest employers in San Diego. And let's take a look at this. And does anything jump out to anybody about this list?
The colleges are huge, but all the schools, the educations.
Yeah, education's huge.
Yeah, education, hospitals.
Yeah.
Of course, us being a military town, that's the first thing, but then a lot of hospitals.
Well, what jumps out to me is that 90% of all employment comes from small business, and there's no small business in here.
Yeah, it's because it's a top employer, so they haven't even listed. The small business. Yeah. Which maybe is why it's these huge government organizations, because that's the large employer. Yeah. Okay, and to me, a lot of this list seems like nonprofits or governmental organizations, which we do have a program for that. We have public administration, but I don't know how many. It's doing fine, but it's not super well subscribed. Right. So that's what comes out to me. And then I tried to look at the biggest companies too, which of course is going to feed right into Tanya's point about how the big companies.
We have MZ at our college that our dean and associate dean use for BTCWI data analysis in the past. And I think that it brings just more accuracy in terms of.
Makes a difference at the end stage, right? Like where students go to, because students or for some students are going to seek jobs when they leave us. Okay, other thoughts about this point?
So
okay,
I actually I could I could look things up very specifically under industries and under all sorts of different ways, and it was really useful.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, good. So I see you put it in the column here, so that's great. I think this column is maybe going to turn into our, like our solutions column that we might use later. Yeah. Okay, awesome. Okay, so the next one's me, and I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this part of it, but it did seem to me as I was within the Latinx students, like we had a pretty big population of students that are non-traditional age. So about half of our students are traditional age, about half are non-traditional age. And about half say they want to earn a bachelor's degree. Although the research suggests that if a student comes to college and they don't have a good answer for that question, we ask them that question on their application, why are you coming to college? And there's some research that indicates that it's not socially acceptable for young students to say something other than university. So they say 80% that are not in our service area. So I think it's clear that we draw a lot of students from Palomar service area, which is just north of us. I don't know that any of this is necessarily something we want to take action on. I just think it's interesting. Comments on this bit?
Other than just that I don't have data specifically, or remember seeing it, but a pretty high number of people, I'm surprised, that are taking some of my online classes are out of state. They're not even local here at all.
Wow.
Interesting. So,
that's a good point. I have a few that are out of the country.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'll just make a note of that. What students know or don't know about our interest area, why do students even enter our interest area, or what do they think about when they come in, and do they know that we prepare people for various things, like not just for transfer? So I'm going to put this question over in the right column because action item that we might think about.
I think, could we also add something about like overcoming the the misconceptions about earning a college or a 4-year degree or non-traditional areas of studies, especially for first generation and immigrant students who might have really misconstrued views about working for yourself or getting a degree that's not a 4-year degree.
Anna, do you mean this idea that a lot of students seem to have that you need a 4-year degree to do anything?
Right, exactly that, and also the parents. I've heard a lot of from especially like the first generation and foreign students. They don't think, like, for example, entrepreneurship is a valid career choice, and they think, no, you've got to get a real job, right? And so they don't understand that we're not just teaching them to start a pizza shop or something like this. So I think.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
There's one other thing too, that when you hear parents and students talking about selection of colleges, particularly 4-year institutions, they're constantly looking at the average salary of what the graduates get. And the reality is it depends a lot on where you live or where you're working. That number by itself doesn't mean very much to me.
Yeah, I've read some interesting research recently, or I guess listened to it. No, I guess both, that studied the reputation of the college and salary, and there was almost no correlation.
Yeah.
And and your major in college, that had a huge correlation, right?
Right.
So it's I think it's a big misconception. Tanya, did you have something else? Your hand
Oh,
raised.
no, I just put my hand down. That was from before.
I have something going, your point about, learning more about the interest areas. I think this is maybe, I don't have stats on this, but I think a lot of people I want to be a computer programmer. They open the catalog. Okay, what class do I need to take? They just look at that. The catalog has a lot of interest areas that people can look at, but they're focused on one thing. And before I even joined working with Miramar, I didn't realize how much is out there for students.
Yeah, Ron, is your point that the lots of our students don't really know the breadth of offerings that we have? Is that
exactly? We got this. Ready to go and look. I need to go and when I go and do Fortran program, so they don't look at anything else. Yeah.
Right, which maybe could be overcome by having them do something like a self-assessment. Like Mona probably sees this quite a bit. When you get people doing a self-assessment, they'll look at things that they wouldn't have thought of before, maybe.
Yeah, I'll share my perspective on assessments when it's my turn, but yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on to Don. Don, you looks like you looked at some of the populations, like where students were coming from. So high school, military, students from other areas and four-year institutions, older individuals. So I think this dovetails with what I saw, which was that only half of our students are sort of traditional high school students. The other half are coming from a bunch of different areas. And we do have a large military population. I think it's around 10%.
Right.
So that's pretty big for a community college. Yeah. Evening enrollments in Trinidad. You know, I've noticed this for years, this evening enrollment thing. I used to teach evening class and evening in-person class, and then it disappeared. And I don't know, I guess I don't have data to back this up, but I feel strongly that it's because the students at work coming online.
Wow.
Yeah.
But there wasn't a corresponding increase in the online during the same period, it didn't seem to me. So, but
interesting. Yeah, for me, the reason I say that is because I did just onesie-twosie know some students that told me that, you know, and it was also kind of this like self-fulfilling prophecy, because students would tell me, well, I wanted to come in person, but you stopped offering the in-person classes, so I had to go online. You know, and it's so I don't know. Maybe we just, you know, we just passed this little enrollment level or something. So let's look at this. How does undocumented impact unreported? That's interesting. There are 2 points of time snapshots of changes smooth with the decision influencers. I'm just reading through this a little bit. So Don, when I look at this, I think these are really, really good questions. And the common theme to me seems like the decision point for students to enter the interest area. Like, why is it that students are coming to us from these different groups, right? Like there's a lot of different groups, and can we reach them at that decision point, right?
Right, exactly.
Theme here, is it about reaching students at the decision point to come to our college or interest area?
Yes, that's great.
Okay.
And the students, in some cases, particularly the high school students, the decision, it may also be the students or the decision influencers, which would be either their parents or, you know, their schools or, you know, their friends, somebody who's telling them that, no, you never want to go to a community college, you know?
Yeah, it's super interesting. I remember when I worked in the field a while ago, high schools would not let us come on campus until the universities had sent out rejection letters. And it was because they didn't get credit for students going to community college in their API scores. You know, high schools get graded on this weird API score.
Wow.
And so they only get credit if students go to university.
Wow.
They were totally pushing university enrollments, and they weren't even letting us on campus. And I used to volunteer at my high school. I would do senior exhibitions, and like I planned to go to San Diego State University and major in auto mechanics. And I would tell them, you know, or I'd ask them a question. I'm like, well, why did you choose San Diego? Of course, San Diego State doesn't offer auto mechanics, right? Almost no university does. And, you know, I kind of probe a little bit, and it turns out that, you know, they were just instructed by their high school staff that they had to go to university. There was no other option for them. And I think it was just a high school desperate to increase their API scores. It's kind of sad.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, it is. And, you know, the other thing is that I think we could sell better is at the community college, you're always taught by the instructor, by the professor, you know, and you go to San Diego State, and a lot of times you got TAs teaching you, you know, and it's I think some of the best instructors I ever had were in community college. Because they wanted to be in the classroom.
Yeah.
Why on earth? I mean, that doesn't seem legal. I don't know. Like, why aren't the high schools looking out for the best interest of the students? Yeah. It seems ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, they're just trying to up their API scores. At least that's what it was back then.
Yeah, that's upsetting.
Not to mention the cost savings.
All right, exactly.
Yeah, it was pretty sad. Okay, Mona, I see you,
Yeah.
it looks like you looked at some ethnic data.
Yeah, so I apologize if I did any of this incorrectly and if it's not in a logical sequence, and I am not part of the instructional faculty that all of you are, so I come from a very like career center perspective.
No, I love it. That's why you're here. Different perspectives
Okay.
are the reason we have a team. If we all had the
Right.
same perspective, then there would be no reason to have a team.
Exactly.
Okay, so, you know, this is not shocking, but definitely something that, you know, I think we all are aware that, you know, African American students do have the lowest retention rates. And then there was a part where I think Clarissa's, where she's talking in the small video, where she mentioned that the North African and Middle Eastern students, where we have a strong Middle Eastern population at Miramar, are the data, they actually are included in the white students for the head count. So I definitely thought that was interesting. But specifically looking at how students navigate their career identity and when they start college, for example, there's a lot of influence comes from family. And you have to look at the dynamic of culture and how is it a very collective culture where family has a very strong say in the career paths that you go into, and you don't want to disrespect your family and you do what you're told? Or do you think more in an individualistic way where the model that development in the United States, it's a very Eurocentric viewpoint, the psychology behind career MBTI or strong interest inventory, they were created in the 1950s and 60s. And the populations that were studied were primarily middle class white participants. Yeah. And so we really need to modernize how we do career development and how we look at influences. And so I think that we have to be very intentional and careful on how we use career assessments. So one is, you know, Dwayne, Tanya, and I are familiar with the train and gain, or Ron too, I think. So for that, it's very intentional about, like, you know, the students, work study students, looking at, you know, what type of skills are they developing. So using a career assessment that looks at skills is great. All messaging that, you know, let's take this career assessment and it'll help student figure out what they want to major in. I think the feedback that I receive a lot of times from students is like, I still don't know, or that assessment didn't help me, because a lot of the times it's too simplified. So I think solely relying on career assessments is, or giving a lot of emphasis on them, might be setting our students up for false expectations. And for me, I think that, you know, there are many components that influence one's career decision, whether it's, you know, a combination of family, a teacher, a counselor, you know, a role model that is working in an occupation that maybe isn't a relative, but somebody that they see, a guest speaker that comes into the class. And, you know, if a student, you know, Mexican, American, I'm just going to use a friend. So I have a friend who, for example, first generation at Northrop, but he grew up in a very poor neighborhood in Tucson, and, you know, had never even heard of an engineer before or seen somebody who looked like him. You know, but when he was in third or fourth grade, somebody who was of, you know, the same culture, that was working as an engineer, came and spoke in his class. And then when he saw somebody that looked like him and that, you know, was explaining it in a way, it just made it more believable. And so I think that there's already a lot of stereotypes that happen. And I apologize if I'm blunt, but there are certain occupations where, for example, accounting is a very from a BIPOC background, you already have these images of certain occupations not being ones that you can identify with. Like, I'm Indian, right? So obviously doctor, engineer, that's like the norm. But if I wanted to pursue something in the arts, there's a lot of, you know, just fear of, you know, what would my parents think? What would my culture think? The society. And so a lot of our students, beyond culture, besides what the career assessment says, it may not necessarily align with, it's very complex. I guess there's many different components to consider. And so I think that for me, the small steps that I won't think about is finding ways to connect with. I love what Tanya's doing with the rec and bringing guest speakers from very, diverse backgrounds and like with different ages. And I think that's a great model of connecting to our community. I love what's happening with the advisory boards, and we're inviting people from the community. So that's just some of the points that I have. I know we're running out of time soon, but on that piece.
Wow, yeah, very powerful. Okay, I want to give other people, I want to respond to that, but I want to give other people a chance to first. Anybody want to?
Well, yeah, I can.
Sure.
I type in. I completely agree. I was a profession where people thought I've been in computers all my life, and people would see me and they would question. I remember seeing an old manager I used to work for, and he says, "Oh, what are you, a welder? Do you have your own landscaping business?" I go, "No, I'm a computer programmer." And so there was a lot of prejudice. I was in Florida, and I remember as a manager traveling around installing computer systems, they said, "How did you get up to be a manager?" I mean, I had some prejudice back then. It was just people just seen it. There was no diversity back then. So
right.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Thank you for sharing that.
Mona, I think it was really powerful what you just said. To me, what struck me was we do often, at least I do, go to the career assessment and I say, "Oh, that's a solution. We just need some career assessments." But yeah, I mean, you're right. I know they're all based off of Psych 101 students that, had to get their extra 10% in their class, right? And that's how they develop those things. And so, yeah, I can totally see what you mean about it not being valid, and also about the family expectations. I see it a lot in friends that I have that are not of, white middle-class American culture. So yeah, for sure. Do you, in your opinion, do you think there's like a lot of what you said too had to do with program or major or career specific, like a doctor or an accountant or something like that? Do you think it's less of a powerful influence if we're thinking about the interest area as a whole? So for instance, do you think that there's less of a stereotype that, oh, I'm just thinking about going into public service, or I'm just thinking about going into the sciences, or going into the whole business field? Do you think there's less of that? Do you think it happens less at that area? And I'm just thinking this in terms of like the pathway of students coming through.
I think it depends. If you, for example, if you generalize just business, it can be, one culture might see it as, oh yeah, that's good, you can make money. But if you look at it like accounting versus marketing, or entrepreneurship versus, another area, sales, like it really, like you said, generally speaking, I think STEM has a lot of stereotypes, and it's heavy. I think business has a little bit more of, but I think what can help with that is, again, real life examples and real job titles, and showing LMI, no matter what culture or what type of family dynamic you come from. If there's actual accurate data showing that there are positions, or there are people who have graduated that look like us, or that we identify with, that are alumni, here are some real examples, then I think it helps students and their families feel like, okay, there's hope, or there's something that we can do here.
Yeah, totally. So do you think it would be to say that the stereotypes happen more at the program level in our field, like what you said, accounting versus an entrepreneur versus whatever, than it does at the interest area? So it's not that people say, oh, people that look like you just don't go into business. Instead, they say people that look like you don't go into accounting. I'm just trying to, why I'm saying this, I'm trying to figure out where the focus should be.
Yeah, so I can speak from my Indian view. Yeah, I don't know how, but I also come from a privileged background where my parents have a college education, and I wasn't first generation college student. So I feel like if I told my parents I was going to go into business, they would have been like, are you going to make six figures? Okay, what are you going to major in? So that's a different kind of, conversation versus maybe somebody else who might have a different experience going into business. And I think Tanya has, sorry, go ahead.
But they wouldn't say to you necessarily, business is terrible, you should be an artist or an engineer.
For me, I think it would have been, you should be an engineer, and if you try business.
Okay. All right, thank you. Sorry,
Yeah.
Tanya, go ahead, or whoever's waiting.
Oh
Go
yeah,
ahead.
I was just gonna say I'm so glad, Mona, that you were able to articulate what I was trying to say about the cultural and excuse me, and like family impact on the choice of what they do and how they do it, and I do think that it goes all the way to the interest level, or it can be at either. It depends on the cultural background. Be an artist. I mean, can you imagine? I mean, I can't even imagine what that would have been like, that conversation. So, yeah, I think that that's definitely an issue. And then also, I do believe it's so important for us to put people in front of our students that look like them. I just, I'm thinking of just so many anecdotal, it's not real data, but the students' parents telling me, I don't want my students studying entrepreneurship. Right? Because I want them to do something real. I want them, they're smart. Oops. I think it kicked me out.
Oh, kicked you out?
Yeah, it kicked me out. Are the breakout rooms closing?
They are.
Oh, okay, that must be why. Okay. Good.
How are you doing?
Good. My camera isn't working. All you can see. Maybe it'll work now. Let's see. I'm good. How are you? I'm so sorry you were so sick.
Oh my God, I got COVID, and I'll tell you, it kicked my butt.
I am so sorry. It's the scariest thing in the entire world. I don't know how you went through that.
And you know what? I mean, we think we're vaccinated, and
Yeah.
I'm careful.
Yeah.
I'm really careful.
Me too, yeah. But you still,
So.
well, I've had so many people that I've heard the same thing. I had a friend die a week and a half ago from COVID. So, anyways.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Right? No, thank you. So sorry to the rest of the group there. I got kicked out a little earlier than you for some reason, and in the middle of a sentence. So yeah.
Tanya just showed up, and she's like, "I think I got kicked out." Dwayne kicked you out, didn't
he? Right? Yeah. Did you throw me out?
I didn't like her point. Get off my bridge.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Tanya, can you take a hint?
Security to the bridge. Yeah.
So how are your breakout
Good.
sessions?
So good.
Excellent.
So good.
We want this to be different. We don't want this to be the same old. We want your groups to have discussions. I was listening to many of your points and looking at your Padlets or your documents behind the scene to see how you guys are engaging. And that's really what this all is about, is figuring out how do you bring the collective minds together to help our students. So before I kind of ask the next question, does anybody have any questions or any statements or anything they want to share?
I have a question, Lisa. At the next meeting, just in terms of us kind of planning it out, are we spending the whole meeting just in our group, the IASD group?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll have a little more time for the discussion.
Yes, so this will be the last time that we meet as a whole group, and then from here on out, you guys will meet individually in your IAST group.
Cool. So we won't see you though again. That's a little bit of a shame.
Well, I'm always available to be invited.
All right. Sounds good.
I do try not to attend your meetings because I really try to allow Laura and Dwayne to create the group, and then I only come in if you guys ask me to come in.
Well, hopefully we'll get to see you. We'll invite you a time or two to it. So.
Lisa, one thing I was hoping to do is to use Al's suggested technique to ask my group about meeting times, and we didn't get time to do that because we were so deeply involved in our conversation. If there's not other stuff to do in the last 5 minutes or so, do you think I could do that real quickly before we all leave here?
And that was going to be my question is, did you guys get a chance to come up with meeting times yet?
Not yet, no.
No, but I would like to, and I have a slide ready to try and do that.
Okay. Laura, did your group get to that?
Well, I tried work. So I have a doodle poll and everyone's going to complete it by the end of the weekend. And so I said I would send a message with the finalized time on Monday.
Perfect. Okay, well, if there's no questions, then Dwayne, I can let your group go ahead and just meet here, and you guys can come up with a time. And then Laura's group, you will be doing a doodle poll to get your time. I hope that you enjoyed today's meeting. I hope it was different than your expectations were. And that is that I hope that you're starting to see guided pathways can bridge great gaps, and it can also bridge programs that may not necessarily have been connected. And so I hope that you're seeing that guided pathways is really about connecting the entire college and then using those connections to help our students.
Love it. Thank you so much. Great meeting.
All right, so Laura's group, have a great day. And then Dwayne's group, I'll put myself on mute just so I don't leave and turn over the host in the last couple minutes. And Dwayne, you can take over.
Hey, thank you.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have
Bye,
a
guys.
great weekend, everyone.
Bye, Laura.